rebuilding. The catastrophic failure, a new start. Physically, mentally, our careers, our businesses. Step back, first step, next step. The driver in me just wants to get it done tomorrow. We'll do this, do that, let's move this, where are we at with this? You build some confidence, build some self-esteem, start to feel better about yourself. The Silverback Blueprint Podcast, a show for men over 40. We focus on getting stronger, staying motivated, building discipline, creating a community, and becoming truly happy. We're at Rhapsody today. Rhapsody Strategies here in the Byward Market. That's in Ottawa for those of you living, listening to us in Fort Lauderdale. I like to pick a different place, around the world. I only know two, Russia and Fort Lauderdale. And today, episode 45 of the Silverback Blueprint Podcast, once again, is brought to you by our amazing sponsor, Hostile Gear. Of course, it's my company. I think what I'm going to start doing is I'm just going to start using other companies as sponsors and just send them a bill afterwards and say, yeah, I spoke about you. Please pay $197. Thank you very much. We'll see how what was that reverse billing they used to call it back in the 80s and 90s and stuff. We'll see if that works. Guys, today, episode 45, we're hanging out with Robert Smith from Greenmelon. Really cool branding company. I met Robert a couple of years ago through my doings and goings-ons with Rhapsody Strategies, and liked him right away. Cool guy, very creative, sharp guy. Falls right into our demographic. He just turned 50 a couple of weeks ago, and we had reached out to him and asked him if he'd be interested in coming on the podcast, and without even knowing what he was getting into, he said yes. Another thing I like about Robert. I just like this guy, and that's what I'm trying to do with you guys that are listening. Is I'm just trying to put good people in front of us that are good people, getting things done, that have been through some shit, got past that shit, are still dealing with shit, but at the same time, creating and still doing and getting things done, and really living the mantra of, we may be in our 40s and 50s and 60s, but there's so much more to do, and we're just getting started. In fact, we're just getting interesting, as I like to say. So with that, Robert, tell us a bit about yourself, boss.
Well, it's, as you mentioned, I just turned 50, which I think was more difficult for my parents than for me.
Right.
I've no problem turning 50, and I've actually quite enjoyed it. And I think for me, it's been it's a celebration, or a point where you have a lot of credibility because of your history, because of the shit you've gone through, mm-hmm. and come out the other end. And I think for me, I find it very energizing, and I find it very exciting. I see a lot of possibility, and I think there's a lot of things that are afforded to you as you age. Mm-hmm. Where I think a lot of people have the opposite opinion, is that you start to power down. And for me, it's about powering up, because now you're at an age where you've got a great connection with people. You've got a good network that you can leverage. Right. And you do have a good sense of self.
Right.
And that's how I personally feel. So being in the creative industry, so doing logos and branding, we've designed some coins for the Mint. So
this is Greenmelon. We're talking about your company.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Which has been a great opportunity. But I think now, at the age that I'm at, I've spent so many years, because of what we do at Greenmelon, we help people make money, basically, with mm-hmm. their brand and that, and create intellectual property for them. I'm at a point now where I want to start doing that for myself.
Branding yourself.
Yeah. I want to own what I produce now. I want to build my own intellectual property, and I think at the age I'm at now, I have that luxury, mm-hmm. because I've got a great network like yourself, mm-hmm. for example, where I've made these relationships, and I can now leverage them, mm-hmm. And now build some content for myself. So that's what's been very exciting, and because I've spent years building the business, I now have a staff who are incredible at Greenmelon, that I can do these things, and the company is doing well. And mm-hmm. it's, I've taken myself out of the minutia and the day-to-day, which allows me to, like we mentioned, a book that I've written. I was able to take a month off.
Wow, beautiful.
And go to Mexico and finish the book. And I could only do that because of all of the effort and the hard work that came before.
I think that's the big thing to remember is, especially, a lot of the people that I talk to, we're self-employed, we have our own business, as business owners and entrepreneurs. And for me, the big difference between a self-employed or an entrepreneur or business owner is really, not the size of your business, but how your business is made up. So I think for you as well as for me, as a business owner, we have staff, we have a facility, we have people that depend on us, but we have a network that we have to take care of, and that's hard to do. Yeah. Any of it's hard to do, but to build a business to the point where your systems are there and your business is there and your skill set as a business owner is there to allow you to get to the point where you can make enough money to keep that going. That's the first hurdle, and yes. I'm sure we'll talk about some of that stuff where that's not easy, and that's where so many people, if your passion isn't great enough and your vision isn't big enough and your fight for yourself to create that isn't strong enough, it's not going to happen. That's right? What's that been like? What's that
Well, it's been difficult. Certainly, I mean, building a business in any industry is difficult. And you really, to your point, you really have to be passionate about what you're doing, or you won't succeed. And it's simply just because it takes so much energy and yourself into it to really build it. And for me, the passion came from... I don't know how many of you out there have had a negative high school experience, but mine certainly was. And I am very fortunate to have a great family and support system behind me and my parents, where, finishing high school, all I knew is that I could draw, and I was a good painter at watercolor and oil paint.
So very much artistic background.
Very much fine arts. Okay. And so they were taking me to take courses at the Ottawa School of Art on weekends and things like that. And, at the end of the day, when I graduated from high school, it was that experience of, well, I'm not in the sciences, I'm not in the medical area, I'm not in the maths, right. So I'm going to be an artist. Okay. And, came to grips with that. And the turning point for me was having a guidance counselor, and that's made the difference. And I think we all, and this is another age thing, and something that I do regularly, is always look at mentoring, always look at helping people who are struggling early on in their career. And I had that in my guidance counselor, who called me into his office one day and said, "You should get into graphic design." And I said, "Okay, what the hell's that?"
Yeah.
I had no clue. And so he brought this book out and he started showing me stuff. And it was this literal light bulb moment of, oh my God, you can make money doing this? And he said, yeah. He helped me fill out my college forms, right. Choose the colleges, right. All of that stuff. And I went from literally, I'm pretty sure I got through high school by the grace of my teachers just not wanting me to be back another year. Yeah. So you know what, here you go.
This is for us as much as it is for you,
exactly.
Robert. Yes.
So I think I got through high school with a 58 average, right. Or something like that, to a 3-year college where I was A+, top of my class, head of the school, student body, moved out of town, learned how to live.
So what's the one thing that for you made that switch happen? So you went from all intents and purposes, they're thinking, this guy's going to hopefully get a job digging ditches somewhere, yeah. and not, steal my shit on the weekends, yeah. to top of your game, within weeks, really, when you think about it. Absolutely. You left high school, 8 weeks later, you're in college. Yep. What was it for you? What happened?
Well, again, it was for me. It was that, and I'll be straight up. It was that guidance counselor that sat down and said, "Here's what you should be doing." He recognized what I was struggling with, what I was good at, and while I got incredible marks and did really well, and this 3 years at college really directed me into the career that I'm in right now. The other thing that was pivotal was moving out of the house. And moving out of the city to somewhere where I knew nobody. Right.
Having to fend, toughen up, self-reliance.
Learn life.
Yeah.
Make a lot of mistakes. Yeah. But also the opportunity to reinvent myself. I entered a city and a school where nobody knew me. I had no baggage.
Yep. You didn't have everyone saying, pigeon-toeing
Rob.
you in this position where you just all of a sudden showed up in a fucking rock jacket and t-shirt now and kicking doors in and shit.
Absolutely.
Really cool.
You know, and I don't think enough people take that opportunity, and I really think you should when you get out there. Is again, I learned a great deal in my classes at college, but really the big thing was life.
Yeah.
You know, and it was a very, very much a renaissance for me in discovering myself and getting rid of all the baggage that had followed me through the school system.
Yep.
And I came back to Ottawa a completely different person.
How old? So you left, you were obviously like 19-ish?
I was 18.
18? Yeah. You're back, how old are you now?
When I'm back in Ottawa,
when you came back
21.
21. So, 3-4 years, but a big 3 or 4 years.
Huge.
From one Olympics to the other.
Absolutely,
right.
yeah.
Interesting.
It was huge. And that's what that whole experience gave me, the confidence in myself to take on projects that I've done over the years. I've done a lot of really kind of crazy things. And it's only because I had that experience of getting rid of my baggage and being very much a wallflower in high school and kind of, don't pay attention to me, to somebody with a great deal of confidence. It made a big difference for me. And again, that coupled with the support I had from my parents was great, because they were, again, my dad's was in sales. So art was like,
That's right.
I don't
He's
get
like,
it.
Yeah.
And my mom's a classical pianist, so she understood the arts to a certain degree. But again, from a career point of view, it was just not traditional.
Well, I think parents, especially, you're 50, I'm 40, 49. I have to think about that. We were like, become a lawyer, become a doctor, become something,
Absolutely.
that kind of thing. And the hard part, I have a 14 and a 16-year-old. My 16-year-old's talking about going away to school, so I'm pretty excited about that.
Yep.
And the big reason why I'm excited is that because I know it's going to really test him. It's really going to bring him to the next level and stuff, right?
Yep.
And I want him to be fearless in his fear. Do you know what I mean? Because
Absolutely.
We're scared no matter what, and it doesn't matter how old we are, right? And to me, that's the fact that he's doing that. He changed high schools last year because he just wanted to change. And I know some parents are like, well, you shouldn't do that. And I'm like, you know what? Fuck it. He wants to make a change. Go do it. Because this way, if he does stumble, we're there to catch him. Yep. But at the end of the day, the fact he said he wanted to do something and he went and did it, to me, is where the magic starts to really happen.
It's huge.
Right?
So a quote that I live by, and I literally have this in my office on the wall, and I may eventually get a tattoo with it, but it's by Mark Twain, and it is 20 years from now, you'll regret more the things you didn't do than the things you did do.
Absolutely.
And that's another key. I keep reminding myself that because in essence, it's about not living with regrets. And we've all been in that point where you see a new product come out or a book or a movie idea or whatever, and you think, damn it, 5 years ago, I had that.
Yeah.
That was my idea.
Yeah.
What the hell?
Yeah.
Well, you know what? You didn't do it.
Yeah. Fuck you, jerk. You didn't do it, right?
Exactly.
You had to do it. The big thing about that is super important is that, and this reminds me of another quote, especially as we're talking about guys over 40. I know a lot of us are trapped because we were maybe knee deep in some regret, right? Mm-hmm. And we feel stuck and we feel like it's too late. And there's a proverb that I really like. Well, exactly, right?
Fuck.
Exactly.
Total bullshit.
But you need to remind yourself of that every day, because some days you'll be like, yeah, I fucking believe that. And then some days you're like, well, that's not true. Mm. But, there's a proverb out there, and I don't know if it's Japanese, Chinese, or fuck it, I made it up. I'll just go with me. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
The next best time is right now.
Right now.
Because that's the thing, and that's one of the things that I like to think about, because I'm 49, and in my business career I've done some amazing things, but I've had some spectacular fucking failures at the same time. Yep. And there's days where I'm like, if I just would have done this, I'd be here. And maybe I would, maybe I wouldn't. But what's important is that I recognize it, and on the days where I'm struggling mentally, the days where I'm struggling just as the business is just, we're having, it's one of those weeks or one of those things are happening, and it happens, I think back about, I've done a lot of stuff, and I have a lot fewer regrets than most people do. But I still have some. So I use that as fuel. So I don't want that to be a regret anymore. Or I need to replace this regret with this accomplishment.
Exactly.
Right? And to me, that's the big message that's so important for guys to understand, is that we're only done if we think we are. But the problem is, relegating yourself to be finished at 40, 50, 60, you know what? Without trying, we're living to 70s and 80s.
Yep.
Right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Taking care of yourself and doing a lot of positive things for yourself. We can live to 90. I want to live to be 100.
Yep.
But I want to live to be 100. I don't want the last 20 years shitting in a chair and fucking someone washing me down once a week if I'm lucky. I definitely don't want that. But the same token, I think the biggest sadness I see when people come in to our gym, at Hostile, the majority of my clientele is over 40, is they're at a point all of a sudden where they've been focusing so much on their jobs, their careers, their families, their businesses, that they're just at a point where they're now broken and they're having trouble even maintaining that. So the one thing that did give them their identity and their self-worth is slipping away because the marriage is breaking up, because they haven't been the type of partner they should be, or the partner they're with is moving on or moving forward. Who knows what that is? Or, the business isn't going well all of a sudden, because, in business you'll have great years and you have some terrible years, months and weeks, all that rolled into one. And if your identity is only on the one thing, the moment it goes bad, you're in trouble because you have nothing else, right? And to me, that's the big thing, is that it's time to start reinvesting in yourself.
The only person that you have any control over in the world is you. Mm-hmm. And the only person that's going to do anything substantial for you is you. And
the only one who really gives a shit is you. If you're lucky to have someone who really cares about you, there's going to be a close second.
Yes.
But honestly, only you matter at the end of the day. Now, like a superpower, you want to use it for good, not evil, right? Yeah. Not narcissism, right? Don't be narcissistic. I think we need to be a little bit narcissistic in making sure that we're taken care of, but to the point that we're able to do what we want to do and be passionate about, but then also be able to give back. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. No, that's the thing is you've got to look realistically. You've got to be genuine. And I think the best thing you can do for yourself outside of physical fitness at
Hostile Conditioning, 1977,
is to invest in yourself mentally, invest in yourself. And that's not necessarily education. Education is part of that, but it's more about self-awareness. And you really have to stop looking at outside influences and definitions and understand what's important to you. It's a great time right now to do that, because there are fewer and fewer guidelines, or like we go back to my high school experience, where
constraints of those,
you're going to be an accountant or you're going to be in math or sciences. Like, all these walls are broken down now. So it's a great time to be able to either reinvent yourself. So, I did that. I was able to do that going from high school into college, but that's absolutely something that you can do going from 49 to 50. Yeah. For those of you out there that are going through a breakup, I've done that. It's another opportunity to reinvent yourself. You know what? I was a shitty partner. All right, own it and move on.
Yep.
And know that your next relationship, you're that much better then.
And I think what you're touching on that I really like is the honesty and the responsibility, right? And I think that's the other thing too, is that we kid ourselves. We use all kinds of mental gymnastics, or we just want to blame. My dad didn't hug me enough. My dad hugged me too much. Fucking whatever it is. I always go back to that. It's a funny line I heard a comedian say one time. At the end of the day, terrible things that happen to us happen. Terrible things that we've done. And that's the other thing too, right? And not let that define us. Accept responsibility for it, but move forward on it, right? And if you keep moving forward and bettering yourself, the things we did in the past aren't that bad.
No, see, that's it. We build them up. We're our own worst enemy.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. And that's a key point. You've got to stop blaming other people. You can't blame your social status. You can't blame your economic status. You can't blame your mental health or where you're at on
It's
anybody.
Not a gender thing anymore. No. It's not an age thing anymore. We're past that.
Exactly. And that's the thing. And it's really important. You're not going to get better. You're not going to progress. You're not going to get to where you want to be until you take that step first. You can't. And again, nobody's going to do it for you. You've got to stop and self-assess.
And that switch can happen immediately.
It's funny. A friend of mine turned 50 4 years ago.
Right. So he's 54 now, guys, for the math.
And I was talking to her, and she said, well, I said, so how's 50? And she goes, it's kind of weird, because it's like there's this fuck you switch that gets turned on.
Yep.
And she said, I'm 50, and she's like, I've got this, like, I don't fucking care, you know, and that's particularly relevant with social media. Yes. She's like, whatever, you know, and so she says, it's funny, but, and I, to a certain degree, I wrote her, I think about 4 months ago and said, you know, that switch, I think I've hit it.
Yeah.
You know,
Beautiful.
and I kind of laughed at the time when she told me, but now I'm there and I'm like, no, that really happens.
Beautiful. And isn't it cool? And I think that's one of the things when I sit back, I always think, you know, when I hit my 40s, I said a couple of things as I was hitting 40. I was just coming in at the tail end of, you know, my business going to shit. And I made a determination for myself, and I said, you know what, I'm going to make being 40 the coolest fucking time of my life. Now, that was hard to do because at the time I was getting the shit kicked out of me, business-wise and, you know, status-wise and financially and stuff. You know, it was really, what do I do, you know, at this point? I went from, you know, killing it in certain areas to, you know, one store, 2/3 empty, lots of debt. And I sat there and I said, well, I'm not good at anything else, so I'm going to reinvent what I do in the fitness industry and start rebuilding it. And at that point, I didn't know how, right? I knew I was going to do certain things, and I was just going to figure it out, right? And a big part of it came to, I just started working out more. I got to the point where I was so out of shape that I was almost 400 pounds. I could bench 500 pounds, so in my head I was okay, but in reality, I fucking knew that, you know, from walking from here to the car from my store, I'm like, I had to plan a sit down, you know, in between. I knew that was bullshit. So it literally started with push-ups and some bodyweight squats. I told that story in an earlier podcast, watching some the UFC, you know, that when they had to be in the house and they had the elimination. Right. It was one of the workouts where they had to do 12 squats, 12 push-ups, and a little bit of cardio. And you had to pound as many rounds as you could in 30 minutes. And I lasted like 8 minutes, and I was on the floor. My eyes were in the back of my head. And I remember going, what the fuck just happened? And I love it. And that's how I started getting back into it and that kind of thing.
But that's the thing you need to do, though, and that's where this whole self-assessment and self-realization comes into play. And I talked to I teach one day a week at Algonquin to third-year design students.
So Algonquin is a college here in Ottawa.
Algonquin College, yes.
Yeah.
One of the things we talk about at the beginning in September is self-awareness, because the design industry, and it's the same with anything, is so open and broad right now that I have to make sure the students are at a point where they understand who they are and what they're doing. And while I'll show examples of work from our studio, and we've got some pretty cool stuff. We do work for beer companies, and we do coins for the mint, and we do food packaging and things like that. So it's kind of cool stuff. That said, that's a very small part of our industry. Right. And so I want the students to make sure that they understand where they fit in the world. So there's some students there say, you know, are you up in the early in the morning person? Do you like structure in your day? And do you like to know what your job description is? Awesome. There's tons of jobs in the corporate world and in the government world and they need designers. That's right. They need creative thinkers in those areas.
In that environment.
Yes.
Yeah.
But that's for you, you know, to understand. Or are you somebody that really thrives on creativity and really thrives on the smaller clients and being able to do things that are, you know, quote, cool? Right. Okay, then, yes, there's tons of jobs out there, but you're not going to make a crap load of money doing it.
Not at first.
You need to adjust your lifestyle accordingly. Yes. That's really important. Mm-hmm. I get so many students calling me up 5 years after they've entered the industry and saying, can we meet? Yes, absolutely. I work for this government agency. I work for this corporation in-house, and I'm losing my mind because there's nothing creative about it. It's just perpetuating the brand, and it's not creative. I need to get back into it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no problem. Here's what you're going to make. And, you know, time after time, they literally fall on the ground. That's $30,000 less than what I'm making right now.
That's the trap.
Yes, it is. Yeah. So what's important to you? Yeah. You know, and I come from a position where I've had the big house and the nice car and a big agency with 20 employees, and we had a huge machine, and I hated every minute of it because we would take whatever work we could get into the shop
because you have to feed that,
just to keep the doors open. Yeah. And that's a commitment that you make as a business owner. And I sold that company to my business partner because it would just, I was not doing what I wanted to do. I was not doing what I was passionate about. So I stripped down, and now I live in a small condo. I drive a Kia, but I'm so much more fulfilled because I've got a small agency. There's only 6 of us. It doesn't take much to keep us going every month. Right. So we can fire clients. We can target clients that we want to work with that don't have a huge amount of money, but we're fulfilled artistically, we're fulfilled creatively, and our clients are getting a lot more than what their budgets usually allow for.
Right.
Because we're engaged with them.
We get to over-deliver.
Absolutely.
And here's a cool thing I guarantee you has happened since you made that call. At the end of the day, it's never easy to, in our mind, we would call that quitting, stepping back, changing gears, right? So we put those titles on ourselves. But the thing is, when you realize that you truly weren't honest anymore, happy, you were honest with yourself that you weren't happy anymore. And that was probably a big thing to do. And you probably, like all of us, we fucking toy with that honesty. And it's like a cat and a mouse, and we're playing with it. We know, but we're not ready to actually admit it. But when we finally admit it and we make those changes, what inevitably happens is once we get past some of the stigmas we might think happen, I went from 5 stores down to 1. A lot of people laughed at me. A lot of people turned their back on me and stuff like that. I paid every supplier off. I didn't go bankrupt because I would not do that. That was my personal line in the sand. Had I done it, it wouldn't have mattered anyway, but that was important for me. But what happens is when you start making those changes, those tough decisions at first, it empowers you.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you start getting energy back and you start doing something, and then you start being more honest with yourself and true to yourself. And I guarantee you right now, where you're at, you may have a smaller agency, but I guarantee you have more business now than you've ever had before.
Absolutely.
Because you're better at your craft. You're better at being you, right? And what happens is that's going to pull in more.
Absolutely.
Of those
more
people,
engaged.
Right? And you're going to do it, I don't like to use the word easier, but it's going to be easier.
Yeah.
Because there's other things that come with it that aren't easy, but it's almost like, what the fuck? Where was I waiting? Why does this all of a sudden seem so easy all of a sudden? Because all of a sudden you just put yourself in a position of strength and played into your wheelhouse.
And you've got to be careful too, because it's very easy, particularly at our age right now, to do that, to go, why didn't I do this 10 years ago? Where would I be right? Yeah. Well, don't. You're here now.
Yeah.
And you're fixing it, and you're feeling good. And it's funny that you bring up the whole bankruptcy thing too, because we got to a point with the company where it would have been, frankly, for business people looking at it, and just from a stress level, and that it would have been easier to just go bankrupt. Fuck it. Fuck it. I'm pulling the plug, and I'm going to move on. And things would have happened quicker, and things would have been better, maybe quicker. But like you, I said, no, I owe people money. I put my word on that, and I'm going to suck it up. And it made for 3 years of shit. And it was hard. And again,
I think 3 years is that magic number, because I think it was like that for me as well too, right?
Yeah.
And you know what was really cool when I went through that as well, and I'm sure you can attest to this, is that some of those suppliers will hold you in the highest regard now forever. Some of them will never talk to you again, but it doesn't matter. It's how you feel about yourself.
See, that's it. Like you maintain your integrity. And that was, to me, that was key. And I've seen people in my industry go bankrupt 2 and 3 times.
Yeah, they get good at it.
Exactly.
They make money doing it.
It becomes their business strategy.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't. And it's nice to hear somebody else in that same situation. It's like, you know what? And the biggest one that I owed the money to was the government. And frankly, I would have rather not paid them the money.
That's the only one I wish. I agree.
But that's where you just make that personal decision. And I look at the amount of money that had I gone bankrupt and not paid that money, I'd have that money plus now. Yeah. And I could have done this and and at the end of the day, it just wasn't worth it for me. And I feel good. It's like, no, I'd never back down. It would have been like
dirty blood money.
Exactly,
you know what I mean?
Right?
But I think that's a big part of it too. I mean, we can look back and sit there and say, if I'd have done this. But one thing I try to use it for myself is to make those decisions that I didn't do well before, I make them better. And you know what, be more consistent and shore up my weaknesses. And that's the one thing that I said, I don't want to go through that again. So shore up my weaknesses. Where did I go wrong? And be honest. Was I not attentive? Did I not have the right strategy?
Yes.
Was it, and at the end of the day, it's all me.
Yeah.
Right. And to sit there and say, even if some of it wasn't my fault, it's still all me. Right. So I don't want to go through that again. So let's do things a bit different.
Absolutely.
And sometimes I catch myself going, oh, fuck, man, don't do that again. Right. And we need to do that. So that's why I think we need to get this shit kicked out of us. So hopefully we learn from it. And there's some people that just don't fucking learn. Just never learn. That's just they're you know. And it's sad because at the end of the day, you know, it's just I feel sorry for that when that happens. Some people are just oblivious, and it's too bad. You know, at the end of the day, I think it affects the quality of who we are and stuff. So you went to a smaller agency. You're down to 6 people.
Yep.
Sounds like things are just much better, but not without their headaches, I'm sure.
Yep.
Right. So how do you deal with that kind of stressful situation now at 50? You know, in those tough situations, differently than you did when you were 20 and 30 and 40. What's the big difference? How do you approach that? We don't have to get specific, but what's different about Robert now?
Yeah.
In dealing with those situations.
Well, again, it's that, and it's unfortunate that we do deal in milestones from a society point of view. It's like 40, 50, and things like that. But like I said earlier on, for me, okay, I'm 50 now. So you do get, to me, it's meant a little bit of extra bravado from the point of view of, fuck it, I'm 50. And I've made it this far, and I've had, like, you have these accomplishments, you have these scars, and you have these accomplishments that other people don't have.
Right.
So you really do take energy from that. You really do take strength from that, because those are your scars.
Yep.
Those are your accomplishments. And so it gives you that confidence, right? And it's like, no, this is me. And I built this company for this reason, and we're doing this sort of work. And that's what been the interesting process of writing a book, is that it's a nonfiction book. And I very much wrote it about personal experience and things like that. But when my editor read the first edition, the first proof of it, she said, "This is great, but who the fuck is Robert Smith? And why do I give a shit?"
It wasn't enough about you.
And I kind of looked at her and went, "Whoa, what? This got real." And she said, "No, seriously." She said, "People don't know who you are. You've got to introduce you. You've got to talk about the scars and why you got here, and that it's not a work of fiction. So I need to care about who you are and go, you know what? That's exactly what I've been going through. Now I definitely want to read the book."
Awesome.
And you can only do that when you've got life experience like this.
So this is great. We're talking about one of the things you've got coming up next, which is your new book, which is coming out November 16th. Yep. And what's it called again? I know what it is. I just want you to say it.
It's called The Frankenstein Condition.
Right. So a nonfiction work with a fictional character, Frankenstein. Yes. I love it. So tell us a bit more about that.
Okay. So, and that actually works really well with what we've been talking about. The Frankenstein Condition is essentially assessing where we're at in life and using Frankenstein as a metaphor. And what's great about Frankenstein is that it's universal. Everybody gets it. Frankenstein, now one thing we all get incorrect is that Frankenstein was the doctor.
I was just about to say, we're talking about the monster.
The monster was the monster.
Frankenstein's monster.
So we need to understand that Victor Frankenstein, so in the book, that's the second chapter is, "Hello, my name is Victor," and that's about owning our shit and the fact that we are Victor Frankenstein and we've created a monster.
Which is our life.
And the monster is a beast that was created with bits and pieces of other people around us. And we unfortunately get to a point where we start judging ourselves against this monster that we've created. Okay. And we will never, ever achieve what that monster has, because that monster is not real. There is no human like that monster. And like Victor Frankenstein was trying to create the perfect human, it went horribly wrong. And in our lives, it goes horribly wrong. And where this all stemmed from was, it was actually originally going to be called the Frankenstein Parent.
Okay.
Because I had created a Frankenstein Parent. That was my first version of the monster. And what had happened was I still am a very involved dad, 2 boys. And so I was a soccer coach. I was a scout leader, going on the camping trips, doing all these things, very involved. And I'll admit, it was vicarious as well. Like I wanted to do that shit, so I might as well bring the boys and use them as an excuse. Right. No, I have to go zip lining because it's for the boys.
I don't care for you guys.
Yeah. So, but in that experience, meeting other soccer parents, meeting other scout parents, well, there's one family that their kids were A students. And because I did homework for hours every night.
Right.
And there was a hockey family.
Yep.
And there was the swimming family that went swimming classes and that. And then there was the hiking family. And so I was taking these pieces and creating a parent out of it. So I was beating myself up, and I went through a very dark time of depression and stress and beating myself up because I wasn't that, in quotes, parent.
Right.
You know, I didn't have my kid, you know, I had them in soccer and I had them in scouts and I sat down with them and helped them with their French and homework and things like that. But my focus was always balance, you know, that we're not going to jump these young kids into one big thing. It's like, I want to give them life experience.
Right.
In looking back, that was the right decision. But I was also beating myself up about not doing all the other things. And what I didn't realize was that the academic family, well, their kids didn't do any kind of athletics. They didn't do
were
any
too
sports.
focused on. They tend to be too focused. Yeah.
The hockey family, their
It's just
kids
hockey.
didn't have great marks because they were never home to do homework.
Yeah.
And I didn't take that into consideration in this parent
Right.
that I created. And then once I articulated it to myself, I thought, well, you know what? I'm not the only person going through this. So I started writing about the Frankenstein parent. And then I realized, you know, we do this in our personal and our professional life as well.
That's right.
Okay, we look at people in our own industries and our own careers, and we start building this ultimate employee or this ultimate designer or trainer
Yep.
or whatever. And again, we do it again. We do that with our partners.
Yep.
You know, our wives, our husbands, our partners, where it's like, well, you know, he takes her out for dinner once a week, and
So
he
I have to
bought
do
her
that.
flowers,
Yeah.
and they go out on these holidays and things like that, and you start forcing this life around you, and you're like, I fucking hate cruises. Why the hell are we going on cruises, right?
I'm laughing because I just went on a cruise and it was a great experience, but I probably won't do it again.
Right.
Right. That
You
kind
know?
of stuff. Right.
You
That
know,
kind
and
of
you're
thing.
like, but well, so and so, you know, in our area of influence, you know, they're cruisers. They go 2 or 3 times a year, and like that's great for them because that's what they like doing. But until you're self-aware, you're like, fuck, why are we going on a cruise again? You know,
we don't stop to have that conversation with ourselves or our significant other going, do we like cruising? Like, you know, is this do we want to do this? And I think that's the big thing, because I think, especially if we have something in us where we feel we're not where we want to be or should be, you know, and depending on, you know, our backgrounds and how our lives were, high school, growing up, a lot of times we're striving for something that we felt was missing.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, then we start to latch onto this, we latch onto that, and we don't listen enough to who we are, who we're becoming, right? So one of my favorite things to do is to jump in a car like we did last week, Luke, drive out to meet some guy in a gym and talk about training and look at a gym and see cool stuff. And I'm like, oh my God, you know, it inspires me to make my gym even better. I'm not, 20 years ago, I would have been fucking seething with jealousy and angry.
Exactly.
Looking at this gym. Now I come back and I'm like, that's a fucking great idea. You know, I never thought of that. Or wow, I just love the epicness of what I'm seeing. And it fuels me to keep creating my epicness of Hostile.
That's it. Well, there's a thing in the book called where I break down the monster, much like Frankenstein did. So we talk about the arms and legs, and that's talking about physical health and things like that. We talk about, there's a section called Celebrity Skin, and that's about how we look out on the outside. And then there's, at the end of that chapter, there's a section called Lightning.
Okay.
And so if we remember back to the black and white film of Frankenstein in that, well, he brings the monster to life with lightning. Otherwise, it's just this lifeless mass. Yeah. And that's really what our monster is until it's fueled by jealousy and regret. And those are the things.
That's the energy source it's
using. That's the energy source that brings it to life.
I love that.
It's envy and it's those things and jealousy.
Because we're going to fuel.
And ironically,
with
ironically, I did my research. I did my homework. Lightning is actually a negative charge.
Okay, interesting.
Scientifically.
Interesting.
So I was like, score. So I brought that into the book.
Right
it's like, because what fuels our monster
is negativity.
Envy and regret and those things. Right. And that's exactly what lightning is. And that's exactly what brought Frankenstein's monster to life. So that's the whole point with this is taking all of these things that we're aware of and making it simple to understand
Right.
and to
Well,
okay,
having a
I get
visual
it.
analogy that we can understand. We've
Yeah.
all seen 1 or 2 or 100 versions of Frankenstein and
Yes.
Frankenstein's monster. Monster, what the hell? Monster. But I really like what you said there about it's the energy source.
Yeah.
Right. And so for us, we talk a lot about, the thoughts we put in our head. We talk about the scripts. Our head, to me, I always say, my head's like a TV screen. So it's going to be on a channel. Right. So depending on the channel it's on, it's going to affect what I'm thinking, what I'm doing, where the energy is coming from. Right. That kind of thing. So for me, it's very important that we work on our programming. Right.
Yep.
And what we're doing. So, what are the things that, when you looked at that and you recognize that in yourself and you're saying, okay, well, how do I take basically you, the same life form, and how did you change the energy source? What did you do there? Where does the energy come from now? Where's that positivity coming from?
Yeah, so basically, again, we go back and we're going to keep hitting on it, but it's so key is that self-awareness. So that's what kills the monster, essentially, is, first of all, awareness, knowing, okay, that's a monster that I created. And then the next is, okay, peeling off those parts. So you know what? My boys weren't into hockey. So stop beating yourself up about being a Canadian parent without kids in hockey.
That's right.
It's okay.
It's all right.
So there, that goes away. And school. My kids did better in school than I did. So I can't certainly preach about school and things like that, but understanding, look, just get through the system.
That's right.
And again, you don't have to get A's or whatever. You just get through the system, because once you've done that and you go on to college or life or whatever, you're driving the boat, right? So you're prepared, and then you can move forward. So a bit of it is about forgiving yourself or accepting yourself and peeling those pieces off and understanding that there's, and it's so important this day and age with the internet, and that knowing that all this shit on Facebook or whatever, these people are living a facade.
Yes.
Okay. And there's so much shit behind their Facebook page, and that's
rotten on the inside for so many
absolutely
people, right?
And there's one part I talk about in the book about this is that, for example, a friend of yours bought a new car and put it up on their Facebook page, and a lot of us, the first reaction is, "Fuck, he got a new car. How did he get a new car?
Yep.
What's wrong in my life that I can't buy a new car like that?" Instead of, what, good for him, that's awesome. We don't understand that the struggles, maybe he's in a shitload of debt.
Yeah, maybe he's car poor, yeah.
Or you know what? He's worked his ass off and deserves that fucking car.
But you know what human nature does? It doesn't want to go to that first response. It wants to go to like, fucking, he did this, he's doing that, someone paid for it, right? Because we don't want to accept the fact that maybe he did work his ass off for it. And if we're afraid if we admit that, then we have to turn around and say, well, what's your fucking excuse?
Yeah.
Because we see things through our eyes, through what's happening with us and stuff, right? Yeah. And it's hard. And so sometimes when you sit there and if you find yourself, why am I jealous? Why am I feeling this?
Yeah.
And it's okay to feel that. But what's important now is, well, why is that happening? And well, it's happening because I feel I should have that. Well, then why don't I have that? Well, maybe I didn't make it a priority. Exactly. Or maybe I'm a fuck up and I don't finish the things I'm supposed to do, right? And those are tough truths to have.
Yeah.
You can change them. You can fix them, and then try to figure out what causes that. And I think that's where people also don't want to put the time in, don't want to admit it. It's easier to say, well, I'm too old, I can't do that shit anymore.
Yeah.
Fuck you, you're too old.
No, that's
right?
bullshit.
You didn't do the work before, and you just don't want to do the work now and stuff like that. I'm 3 years sober, and I love it. I love where my life is. It's exciting. I'm different now than I was a week ago, a year ago, 3 years ago. But it hasn't been easy. It's better that I don't drink, but it's actually been harder because now, why I drank right before to get rid of thoughts or to hide things or whatever, to mitigate, to medicate, to whatever. Well, now those things aren't going away. So I have to find other ways to deal with it.
Exactly. But the thing is, you've got to be, there's a chapter, so I use the Frankenstein theme throughout the book. So the chapters are titled things like, and we talk about exactly what you're talking about there. That chapter is called In the Laboratory. And in there we talk about drug shaming, and we talk about self-medication, and we talk about alcohol and things like that. Yeah. And it's funny because I did at one point see a psychologist because of what I was going through. And she said, well, how do you deal with some of the stress in that? And I said, well, I don't drink excessively. I don't take drugs. I said, really, the only thing I can think of is I have a Monster every morning, the energy drink. I have an energy drink every morning, and it gives me that boost. And so she literally wrote down self-medicating. And I got offended.
That stung a little.
I went, whoa. I said, I drink maybe twice a week.
Yeah.
I don't take drugs. I'm not. And she said, you're taking something to counteract what you're going through and you're feeling, and that you're escaping to a certain degree.
Yeah.
Therefore, you're self-medicating. And it really made me think and going, shit, she's right. And so much of us will self-medicate with things like buying, shopping,
food, Netflix, sex,
exactly,
whatever,
all those
something.
things.
Yeah.
And the problem with those ones is they're not regulated, right?
And they're not looked down upon as much. There's not that stigma until it becomes a huge issue.
Drugs and alcohol and things like that. It's like, okay.
People are like, I understand. I get that. I see what you're,
But holy shit, I'm $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 in debt because every time I feel bad, I go and I buy
Amazon
something.
the fuck out of it.
Exactly. Or I eat crazy things, right? And those aren't regulated, and those aren't monitored, and it's self-medicating.
And the hard part too is the balance. I think once you're coming from, and this is for me as a recovering alcoholic, obviously, is that it's easy to replace one thing with another.
Absolutely.
And then it's always a question is it just because I really want to eat this hamburger, so it's okay? Or is it because I just got some stress in the last couple of days, so I want to eat a hamburger? Yeah. So I think sometimes that's where I get a little tired personally, is like always, why am I doing this? But I'd much rather get tired once in a while, always asking myself, why am I doing this? Than just being oblivious and exchanging one thing for another overall, right?
Well, that's it. And the whole idea of you're a recovering alcoholic, and for a lot of people, that's a negative stigma, or there's an impression of that.
That's right.
But to me, it's like, that's what makes you you.
Yeah.
That's an awesome thing because you've gone through a process. You've addressed
still
something.
going through it, for sure. Yeah.
And that's making you stronger. That's making you a better person. That's making you Kurd, right? And there's something that needs to be celebrated about that.
On the good days.
Instead of hidden and kind of like,
for sure. On the good days, when our head's in the right space and things are going well, we all have these indicators in our life that we use to determine if things are going well. It's easy to sit. That's definitely how I feel. I'm like, you know what? All these things that have happened and I've been through have made me a better version of me. On the hard days, all these things that have happened to me, that kind of stuff is why I'm a fuck up, right? So we're taking the same thing and we're just looking at it depending on what's going on. So for me, what's really important, and I'd like to talk about this a little bit for yourself as well, is how do we set our days up so that we stay in the light as much as possible?
So the thing is, and this is a quote from the book as well, you've got to realize you're in the dark before you can look for a flashlight.
Absolutely.
And that's why I address and why this book was written, because I got tired when I suffered from depression, and it was debilitating. It gave me paralysis.
It's a real fucking thing.
It is, and going through it gives you some awareness. And what pissed me off was I was looking for help. And I was looking at books, and the books fell into two categories. One was they were written by psychiatrists or psychologists and were full of lots of case studies and jargon and whatnot,
the science
doctor so-and-so. And so I'm like, no, fuck that. And the other side was everything's fine. Life is a rainbow.
That's right.
And we're going to be great. And isn't this wonderful? And I'm like, fuck you. It's not. I'm in a shitty place. And the last thing I want is somebody telling me it's all rainbows and fucking
because neither one
unicorns,
helps
right?
at that
like,
moment.
No,
because we're in the middle of that.
And that made me more angry, right? There was a wonderful ad that sticks in my mind, and I forget what it's for. It was for some sort of a depression thing, but it was a woman. And you hear her on her voice, doing her voicemail message, saying, "Hi, this is Karen. Sorry I can't come to the phone right now. Thank you so much for calling. I'll get back to you as soon as possible." Like a very positive. And as they pulled back, she's standing there in her kitchen in her suit, ready for work, and just
frozen,
done.
Yeah.
Horrible. And I looked at that, and I remember that, and that's for me a pivotal moment. I'm like, exactly. That. You're never going to. And with alcohol, you're not going to suddenly stop wanting a drink.
No, you're not going to stop wanting the feeling better.
Right. With depression, you're never going to have light all the time.
That's right.
There are days for me where I get up and I just can't get up, or I sit there and I've got to coach myself out of it to just get up and say, you know what? I'm in a bad place right now, and you've got to admit that. I'm in a bad place right now. And it has nothing to do with who I am. It has nothing to do with going to work or what's for breakfast or any of that stuff. No matter what happens today,
I'm right here.
I'm here.
Yeah.
So I need to own it. And I find myself with my partner and with work being open about it. Because they'll call me out and saying, Rob, you're kind of off today.
Yeah.
And I have to say, yes, I'm having a bad day, and it has nothing to do with you guys or anything. I'm just in one of my dark places, and I'll get better.
Yep.
I always come out of it.
Yep.
Sometimes it's a day, sometimes it's 2 days, whatever. But know that I'll get out of it, and know that
that's right.
Nothing you can do. Getting me cupcakes and well, hugs are great.
Yeah.
I'll have to say, but. You know what? No matter what we do, it's. I just gotta.
Sometimes we just have to go through it.
I gotta go through it. I've just gotta wait it out.
I think so. Yeah.
But you've got to be in that mindset of that's what's happening. That's what's happening, and it's a very conscious moment where you go, okay, because you'll go for an hour or so, just ratcheting yourself up,
fixated on something,
and building and building and building, and then suddenly you find yourself. I broke my hand one day punching a wall. And note to self, historic buildings don't have traditional drywall.
That's right. The studs are everywhere.
Whole stone. So anyways, and that was a physical moment of like, why the fuck did I do that?
Yeah.
How did I get to that point? And I had to stop and go, okay, what happened in my day?
Yes.
It's like when you get food poisoning or something where you're like, what the fuck did I eat?
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So this was
but it doesn't stop you from suffering the food poisoning at the moment, right?
It's just like,
you're still going to throw up and shit yourself.
I'm not eating shrimp again.
That's right.
Or I'm not having that, Petro-Canada
shrimp
sushi.
on the dash.
Yeah. But it's, so you have to have that, you have to be present.
Yep.
And that self-awareness. Again, we're going back to that self-awareness, but it's the key. It's the silver bullet. It's not going to change. You're not, like I said, you're not going to have light all the time and everything's rainbows and all that bullshit. No, you're still going to have those days.
So what are one of the techniques when you catch yourself in that, right? And you realize this is happening, right? What are one of the techniques that you'll use to break yourself out of that or recognize it and say, okay, this is what's going on. So what's one of your go-to moves at this point?
Go for a long walk.
Okay, good.
Just walk.
Good.
Just go.
Get some fresh air and move physically.
Absolutely. Yeah. And unburden yourself. Okay. So I so it's like I get up in the morning, it's like, okay, I got 3 meetings, I've got this deadline, this deadline. First thing I need to do is I need to call my office manager and say, okay, I'm off today. Can you reschedule these meetings?
Right.
Can you change this deadline for me? Once that burden is off, there is a feeling of
a relief.
Positivity, a relief.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, good. I'm not accountable to anybody today but myself.
Right.
So for me, it's like, okay, I'm going to go out for a walk, and then I'm going to go to a movie. I'm a movie guy.
Yeah, same here.
There's nothing that feels better than fucking off in the afternoon, not telling anybody, and going to see a matinee. It feels a little dirty.
Not one of those raincoat matinees, though. Like just like a movie matinee.
No. Like going to see like Blade Runner. Go see Blade Runner or something. It's like, you know what? And just get a big fucking popcorn.
Fuck, dude, same thing. Absolutely.
And and you go by yourself.
It's National Robert Day, and we're going to go do it.
Absolutely.
I think that's really, and you know what? I think that's super important. And what I like what you talked about too, though, is that you didn't just let everything, you didn't shit the bed, meaning you just didn't show up for meetings. You didn't do that. You turned around and still took care of some responsibility. And I think that's the big thing. There's days sometimes where I have to teach a class. I don't teach a lot of classes, but some days I'm just, I've had that afternoon. I've had that conversation with the bookkeeper or the bank account or a supplier or just things aren't where I fucking want them right now. And then, the wheels start going and I have to break it. And then I'll sit there and I'll say, all right, you know what? I'll call one of the coaches or text them and say, listen, I need you to take one of the classes. They know me well enough that when I do that, they don't ask questions. Yes or no. If they can, great. If they can't, no problem. I'll go in and teach it. Right. But then I really have to prepare myself, and I have to get my headspace, and it's inside. It feels kind of fake. A lot of times they can't tell the difference, but I can tell the difference. Right. That kind of thing.
Absolutely.
So I think that's super important. And then I was telling Luke, just driving over here, we had so much going on over the last week, busy week last week, Montreal on Tuesday, busy at the gym. Thursday I was in Kingston. Friday, a bunch of stuff. Saturday, training, people coming in, shooting video. Sunday, hockey. It's just, so all of a sudden it's Tuesday morning and I'm like, all right, we got to go, we got some podcasts to do and stuff. Yeah. So, but I love that. I love that I'm busy and I love that things are happening, but I also start to feel that pressure coming behind me saying, okay, it's getting a little overwhelming.
Yep. Right.
And I need to take a deep breath. And today the afternoon, I want to do this, this, and this. And now I'm like, as soon as I'm done at the gym at 5 today, I think I might just pull the pin and just go do something.
Yep.
Right. And maybe come back at 7 and train with the boys on bench or whatever, or maybe just lose myself in something. But when I start to feel that, that's the one thing I've learned to recognize is do something about it.
Yeah.
Recharge, figure something out.
Do something for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Again, nobody's going to do it for you. And it's not that you're surrounded by assholes.
No.
I mean, there'll be some in there for sure.
For sure.
But they don't know. Again, we when I speak about depression and anxiety, and I'm sure drinking was the same, where you hide it, right? Like you
internalize
people,
it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So people around. So in the book we talk about getting under the covers and just hiding, basically.
I've had 2 p.m. I've had days where I go under the covers at 2 p.m.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yep.
I know when I first came out about being an alcoholic, I was into the program for a year before I did.
Yep.
And when I did, I had so many people who knew me come up to me or message me or whatever and go, I can't believe it. I never thought you were. And I said, first off, well, I was just probably pretty functioning, not high functioning, because I don't think so. But anyway, at the end of the day, it's just because it was deep inside. But I had known for years.
Yeah.
Right? It wasn't like, maybe this was. I had known deep down 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Right? That kind of thing.
Exactly. And depression is the same, right?
Absolutely.
If people, I finally came out about it and about the book and things like that, we were like, what? Because I'm the guy at the party that's, singing or really badly singing.
Of course.
But, singing or whatever and meeting people and everybody in the office always jokes about me being the networking guy. Drop me in a room and I'll meet everybody and I'll know their stories. And it's true because I enjoy meeting people and talking to people and stuff like that. But there's this whole side of me that people don't see, and they were, again, surprised, like, what? Really? Like, yeah, absolutely.
And I think if we go back to talking about the positive and negative energy, I think one thing is super important is managing our energy.
Yes.
Doing things we need to do to build that energy. So for us and for even me personally, it's working out, it's feeling strong, it's getting things going physically, eating better, all those magical things that make such a huge difference that give me that energy. But then the other thing is to understand that I have a finite amount of energy for today, or this project, or this thing coming up.
Yeah.
And when I'm done, I need to pull back. So I'm the same as you. I love to talk to people. There's times I go to walk into a thing and I'm like, all right, Kurt, take a deep breath. Because I just get a wave of anxiousness and then I just sit there, Kurt, just take a deep breath, go in, have your first conversation, you're fine.
Yeah.
Right? But I have to have that pep talk with myself. And some days I fucking don't need it at all.
Yeah.
But when I'm out of that, when I'm out of the light, when I'm at home and you come to my house for any reason that I didn't expect you and I open the door, I'm not the same person. I'm like, what? What do you because I need that time off. I don't want to be in front of people all the time because I can't. I love it, but I also need that time where I just need to, and whether it's swimming in my backyard, reading a book, whether it's just sitting there just doing nothing, it's just as important. And it's that balance that I'm learning how to do it and what makes it work and that kind of thing, right? So that's the challenge overall.
Yeah,
I like that because the other thing I like to talk about too is when we have these issues is what are the tools and tricks and trips, the hacks as we call it. I don't like the term hack overall because, people, I learned these 10 hacks, I'm going to master it. Yeah. I think you need to find that one thing. For you, it's a long walk. Yeah. For me, it might be a workout, that kind of thing. Yeah. So a movie is very much for me, a good action movie, that kind of thing. Yeah. Very much my thing. Or listen to motivational speeches or music, podcasts. Those things make a big difference. For me, journaling, the days I journal, my days are 10 times. The days I don't journal, 2 or 3 in a row, I get a little lost. That's where I kind of feel today. I've had a crazy weekend. Yep. So, those are things that I recognize and then I go back to and I go back to and I go back to. But I don't beat myself up when I realize it, but I'm like, dude, you know what you got to do. Now get the fuck back and do it.
Exactly. And again, do what's right for you. I'm not a journal person.
Right.
Right. I've got other ways.
Well, that's why I like to ask,
right?
like, what are you doing? What's working for Robert? Because what's going to work for Robert might not work for Steve.
Yep.
But what works for Steve might work for Phil. So it's really about letting people know with this podcast is that you're going to run into shit.
Yep.
You're going to have problems, and you're going to have to figure your way out of it. But there is ways to do it. And do is the word you used earlier that I really like, is you do have to do something.
Yes.
You have to take an action, right? One of the things I learned here through Rhapsody, I like to think about a lot, is a quote that they use, and it's basically be, do, then have. Right?
Yeah,
we
exactly.
have it backwards, right? We think that, we have to do to have, and then we'll be. It's very much the opposite. Once we become, hey, this is who I am, this is what I'm great at, this is what I love doing, this is what I suck at, so I either need to improve on these things or surround myself with someone who can do that better for me, but I'm still ultimately responsible for it either, right? Can't just turn around and become a fucking vagabond or a hippie either to be a strong person in society, because like you, people will look up to you. And you never know who's listening.
Exactly.
And you never know who is going to come up and all of a sudden say, hey, you know what? You helped me. You inspired me.
Yep.
And the more this is happening for me because of the podcast and the brand The Hostile, it still catches me off guard to this day. Because a lot of times it's coming from a direction that I never thought. Right?
Yeah,
that's where I realized for me that the platform is where I'm really in love with it, because I'm able to, it helps me tremendously. I think it's very selfish at the same token. Super selfish, because it's making me better by doing things I like to do, being around people, circle of influence. I want to raise my game so I can hang out with people who've risen their game, right? So it's very selfish of me for that. But at the same token, I also know that if I can do that, I'm going to bring some people up with me.
No, and that's. I mean, there's been so many thought leaders, and that say always surround yourself with people who are smarter than you.
Yeah.
Because you'll learn.
If I'm the smartest person in the room, I'm not getting anything out of that room.
That's it, and that's something we talk about in the book: the idea of perfectionism, and that the fact perfection does not exist. So we need to get that word out of our vernacular. But if you reach a point in your life where you feel you're perfect at something, that means you're no longer relevant in that thing. You can never learn more. You figure you know it all, and therefore you've rendered yourself irrelevant.
Well, it's funny you say that, because I think the moment you really start to believe that about yourself, the exact opposite has happened.
Yeah.
Right? You stood still, and so many people have passed you.
Yes.
Right? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
But worse is you stop moving forward. We just had a talk with Mark Hatfield, and he was talking about one of his goals was to make the NFL. And once he reached that huge pinnacle, this is a kid from Blackburn Hamlet that now is playing, for the Miami Dolphins with Dan Marino. That's pretty. Yeah. And he said himself, looking back now, he realizes that he wished he would have set, once he reached that, to set a higher goal of becoming a Hall of Famer. It's one of the things he regrets, is that he didn't push to the next level. And he never even was able to, from what I gather from our conversation, he didn't put it into actual context until a kid that he was doing a talk at a school actually asked him, asked a question that had never been asked in over 300 talks. And the kid says, well, why not at that point did you not raise it to a higher level?
Exactly.
And even when he's telling that story, he actually had a pause. We both paused and were like, oh, motherfucker, right? That so powerful, right?
Real.
That kind of thing, right? And I think that's so important, right? Is that, we need those to move towards something and get there. But then when we get there, if we don't put another one, right? If two things happen. A, we'll start to settle, but then we'll actually start to slide back.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly. You get lazy.
Yeah.
And that's...
well, everything's moving.
Yeah.
So if you're not moving with it, you start to slide back.
Well, that's a quote that we use at work is... even if you're on the right track,
right?
If you stop, you're going to get run over.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So you got to keep up to the momentum you created, right? And I think that's the big thing about that energy is being able to maintain that energy and take care of yourself, self-care, so that you can maintain that pace and that speed and do what's needed to be able to do it.
Well, the analogy that I use, because there's I'm sure a bunch of people out there listening to this that are very altruistic and very much nurturers and want to help other people and things like that, and that's wonderful. And again, mentoring is really key, particularly when you reach a certain age. That's really where your energies need to go is helping yourself, but also mentoring and giving back. But if for those of us who fly, you go on the plane and they give you the demo on if things go wrong. And when the oxygen masks go down, you put yours on first.
That's right.
Before you help somebody else.
That's right.
Because you can't be effective for anybody else unless you're not taking care of yourself. And there's a clear-cut idea right there. So shit is going horribly wrong.
Yep.
The plane is going down.
Yep.
There's no air in it.
Yep.
The thing you need to do first
It's self.
is self.
Yeah. It's funny, I was just going to bring that up in that exact scenario and stuff, so you beat me to it. But it's absolutely correct. If I want to have a wonderful life for me, my wife, my children, I need to be wonderful. Right? I need to do what's important to do that.
Fulfilled.
I need to be happy. I need to be passionate, but I also need to do what has to get done to allow me to provide that environment for my family.
Yep.
Right? That kind of thing. So
Exactly.
So how can people reach you, Robert? They want to find out more about you, more about the book, more about Greenmelon. Give us a couple of things we do, and Lou's going to write this down, and we'll have it in the show notes. But
Sure.
So obviously the Frankenstein Condition, that's your
Yes.
big project right now.
Absolutely.
Right? So
Yes.
what's the best way for people to get on the list to get the one of the first 10 copies?
Yes. So I'm going to be launching a website and Facebook page. Right now the idea is it'll be thefrankensteincondition.com. I own the URL.
Because if not, I was going to go .com that shit and sell it back to Robert.
Exactly right. I knew that. That's why.
That's right. That's what
Literally
you
an
were
hour
doing
before I got here. I'm like, damn
when
it.
you were waiting over there, you're on Names Pro. I know.
Yeah,
what's going on.
exactly. I know what's going to happen here. Right now, and the best way to get in contact with me is through my LinkedIn profile. So it's Robert Smith, and you can find me through that.
Greenmelon.
Greenmelon is the other, my company, so that's easy to remember. We're Greenmelon Inc, inc.com. So all of those ways you'll be able to get a hold of me.
And you were talking about you're going to do a launch for this?
Yes, there's
So
going to
is
be a
there any
launch
deets on
for
that?
this. So
That's what the cool
the
kids say,
idea is
deets.
going to be the plan is to have November the 16th. I'll have a launch event, and then as well as a digital launch. The idea is the book right now is at print. I'm working on book 2. And book 2 is basically a workbook. So it's taking all of this and saying, okay, here's how you yourself
Beautiful.
go through the process, because everybody's monster is different.
Yep.
So I can't tell you that your monster is going to have this, this, or this.
Right.
You've got to get in the driver's seat. So this book will give you those steps. So, okay, step 1, here's what we're going to do, and you're filling in the blanks. Step 2, now you're going to take item 1, 2, and 3 from step 1, and you're moving those forward and doing this with
Beautiful.
it. So it's very
Actionable.
pragmatic,
Love it.
actionable.
Love it.
And then again, based on feedback, I might do a book specifically on the Frankenstein Parent,
Right.
or the Frankenstein partner, or whatever. So we'll see where it goes.
So you're setting some of these big goals for yourself based off this
Absolutely.
as well, right? So this is what's firing up
Absolutely.
50-year-old Robert. Is this
Yep.
the big fire up right now?
Absolutely. So, and again, this is me building intellectual property for myself, sharing my story. And I'll be honest, it's therapeutic for me too. It's very cathartic.
I think that's what I said. Selfish earlier, right? This is
Absolutely.
very, very. If we can take care of ourselves at the same time help others, right? We've done ourselves and society a favor.
And
overall.
although I'm not a journal person, and it's nice to hear that you are, that is an important component. And me writing a book has been that.
Right.
It'll bounce around in your head forever.
until you start laying it out.
As soon as you write it down on paper, it's real.
Guys, what we just talked, right? We just had this conversation with Mark Hatfield, and he said almost the exact same. Until you write shit down. Now,
Yep.
I think that's the thing that scares a lot of people when it comes to journaling and writing shit down. You don't have to fucking be a wordsmith. You can just do it with doodles and diagrams. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Society was built off drawings off a fucking cave. At the end of the day, whatever it means to you. Right, I always thought it was cool, the Indiana Jones movie where he has his little notebook and only he understands it.
Yeah.
I've always thought that was cool, that kind of stuff, right? I just, but bottom line, shit gets written down.
A great example for that, and you're right, absolutely right. This is for you. And the whole idea of sketching in my industry, the whole idea of sketching is getting the ideas out of your head and onto paper so that a week later you can refer back to it and go, oh, right, and then execute it, right? Yeah. It's not for you. It's not art. It's not going up in a gallery or anything. It looks like shit. That's fine, as long as you understand it. A perfect example of this is the architect Frank Gehry, who's one of the world's most renowned architects right now, from Toronto, lives in LA now. And he created the Bilbao Guggenheim Museum in Spain, and the Disney Orchestra house in LA. And these are iconic buildings. When you see pictures, look it up, you'll go, holy shit, these are incredible buildings. Take a look at his sketches. They're crap. You look at the sketches and go, how did that
come from that?
Come out of that sketch? But it wasn't intended for me to look at his sketch and build a building. That was for him. He needed to get out of his head.
Well, and one thing that...
And it's not art by any stretch of the imagination.
Well, maybe not in the others, but, one thing, another quote that I like, and John Lee Dumas, I keep plugging him. Someday I'll be on his show or vice versa. Who knows? But one thing he likes to say, and I think it's so true, if you're not embarrassed by the first rendition of something you've made, you waited way too long.
No, and it's true. In my book, when I finished my first draft, I'm like, fuck, this is awesome. This is the book. I'm on version 4.
And you go back to it a while later and go, what the fuck was I thinking?
And this version is so much better.
But that version couldn't have happened without the first one.
Exactly.
Right? And a lot of the shit that's in your head that you're putting on paper now was there for a lot longer than just a week ago or a month ago or 6 months ago, right? It's the magic of doing. It's the magic of spending. And I think, we're going to wrap this up soon, but I think the big thing is so many people are afraid to spend time alone in their head.
Yes.
Right. And I think
scary.
It's scary. And I think it's the potential that's scary. And then all of a sudden the self-confidence and self-esteem wants to shut it down. And who wants to have that conversation, whether it's with ourselves or another person, of being told you can't fucking do it. And really, I think that's what we do to ourselves, is that we want these big things, but there's a part of us that's always going to say, you can't do it. Right. The imposter syndrome, whatever you want to call it. And no one wants to walk into that conversation over and over again until you get really good at defending yourself.
Exactly. And scientists call it, there's a more scientific name for it, but basically it's the lizard brain.
Reptilian.
So look up lizard brain, because that's and it's part of recovery. Because it's you know what, I've had a bad fucking day, I just need a drink, or I just need to go out and spend money, or I just need that's your lizard brain coming into
the survival thing.
Exactly. And it takes a concerted, focused effort to shut it the fuck up.
Self-mastery.
And that's where people fall short, because it's like it's like why relationships break up, right?
It's a lot of work.
It's work.
It's a lot of work, right? And then all of a sudden it doesn't become worth it. I tell this when guys start training and stuff. They're like, oh, I got to do this. And, I'm busy and stuff. And I said, listen, let's be perfectly honest right now. We all were at that point in our lives where we would drive for 6 hours to fuck somebody we wanted to fuck and fucking sleep for 30 minutes and drive back. And we didn't think twice about doing it because we really wanted to do it. And that's what it's all about. The why isn't big enough. The want isn't big enough. So that's why it starts to dwindle down, right? Or we get sidetracked with other things and stuff. And all of a sudden we forget just how much that person or that individual or that situation matters to us until it's fucking gone.
Exactly. I mean, how many of us have, Pink Floyd's playing in Toronto. I live in Ottawa. Fuck, that's 4 hours. Didn't think twice. Drive back.
Oh, fuck. When we were 20, we'd have done that in a heartbeat. We would have stolen a fucking car to go do it and stuff like that, right? How many times? I remember borrowing a buddy's car. I want to see this girl. I need to borrow your car. When are you going to be back? I really don't know. And they're like, all right, go.
Don't ask questions.
Exactly, right? We've all been there. So what I'm saying, the magic is, the power is to create that and find that passion so that you want to do that.
Exactly.
You want to do your day job all day long so that you can get home, put the kids to bed, take care of what you got to do, and then you can work from fucking 10 till 2 in the morning on your passion.
Exactly.
Right? And that's the big thing. If you can find that thing, then eventually it's going to switch around to it becomes your full-time thing overall.
Exactly.
And I think that's the big message for me these days is find that passion. Don't fucking, surrender and just abandon everything else because you're a fucking useless piece of shit if you just, fuck it, I'm going to Vegas. I'm going to become a lounge singer. And your wife and 4 kids are like, what? I got to be me, right?
Wise men say.
You know what I mean? I don't want that to happen. I don't think that's cool. And I think if it gets to that point, it's something that it's gone too far and you should have addressed it sooner. I think that's that midlife crisis everyone likes to throw around. I like to use the term midlife awareness.
Right? For me, it was midlife celebration, right? It's like when I bought the car, it's like, You know what? It's so funny because, there's your midlife crisis. You got a sports car. It's like, you know what? This is the first time in my life where I don't have kids and I've got fucking money that I can do it.
Absolutely.
I would have done it years and years ago, but I had other things in the... So, yes.
Or you wouldn't have appreciated it for the right reason years and years ago and stuff like that. I drive a 12-year-old Honda Element, right? Why? Because I got other things I want to do with that money. There's a part of me that I wish it was the fucking, big-ass fucking Expedition LS and stuff like that. And those days will come. Or maybe they won't, who knows? But at the end of the day, that doesn't define me, right? That's not, doesn't bring me enough towards my goals and what I want to do and stuff like that.
But there's a point where you go, I could right now. But I could pull the trigger right now and I could get that.
But when you do it at the right time for the right reason, then it's fucking awesome.
Absolutely.
Robert, listen, I want to thank you very much. Guys, listen, this was an incredible episode. Please head over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star review. Check out Robert's stuff in the show notes. Check out our stuff overall. And if there's anything I can do for you, send me an email at kurthaus@gmail.com, and I'll talk to you guys later.